G-Man Boxing. Do you know what I mean? Every single live he donates. I see him on other lives donating. He's got the bag on it.
Alright people, review of the week time. Now this may go out Sunday. This may go out Sunday evening if we do a premiere it. I tell you why, because I've got something planned for YouTube tomorrow, likely tomorrow, hopefully tomorrow, and I want to make sure that that gets done tomorrow, so we'll try and get this out earlier today. Now obviously what we're going to talk about mainly in this is going to revolve around all the fights that happened last night and today actually, because obviously the Sky card's not long after finishing. But we'll start with let's start with the BT Sport card. Okay, let's start with this now. I don't like it when this happens, but it does happen when two cards clash, because you're missing bits in one because you're looking at the other, and then something's happening that it can be a nightmare. I don't like it when it happens, but it happened last night. Now, some of the fights on the BT Sport card I did see. I saw Tommy Fletcher get a big knockout in the first round against this guy. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name. I think he's Czech. Is he? Yeah, he's Czech. And knocked him out in the first round with a lovely uppercut. Now, Tommy Fletcher's an interesting one. This is a 6 foot, I think he's 6'6", 6'7" cruiserweight. So very tall, very kind of lanky frame. And Mark Tibbs actually said to me when I met Mark Tibbs and interviewed him back there in July, that Tommy Fletcher, even though he's only 20 years old, he's the best puncher he's ever worked with. Now, I was ringside for his debut, and he fought some journeyman who looked for a place to lie down the minute a hard shot went in. So you couldn't really gauge whether that, his power is legit or not. But in this fight, one big uppercut, and that was all short. The guy was damn near out cold. So Tommy Fletcher straight away, he's only 19, or he's only 20, sorry, and he's shown very, very good punching power, and he's only going to fill out and grow. So you can only imagine what his punching power is going to be like when he's about 24, 25. So very, very interested to have a look at Tommy Fletcher and see how he goes. Like I said, he's with Mark Tibbs. He's had 3 fights this year. And, his interview after was actually very good, because he basically was saying that he's being built as a big puncher. So he said there is kind of almost a stigma attached to that. Not necessarily a stigma, but he said basically if you're billed as a big puncher and your team are saying you're a big puncher and you go the distance, like say you're in a 4-rounder, and some of them journeymen, they can survive 4 rounds, and you people saying, oh, this, that and the other, he's like, that's more than likely going to happen to him at some point. And he said he's ready for all that. So he obviously has a wise head on young shoulders, because you do see that with certain people. Some people go overboard. I remember when Daniel Dubois had all knockouts until he fought Kevin Johnson, and then people were saying, oh, see, he's feather fisted, can't punch. Oh yeah, he can't punch. Well, I mean, Kevin Johnson at that point was great at surviving. I mean, it was very, very difficult to stop Kevin Johnson. Very difficult. Joshua did, and I think he was only stopped very late on in his career then after. So not someone you'd stop. But the minute Daniel Dubois, who was getting knockouts before, went 10 rounds with him, you people, oh yeah, you see, he's feather fisted. He hasn't gone the distance since then. He's been laying people out who are better than Kevin Johnson. So what was that? You see, so Tommy Fletcher obviously is smart enough to know that that's going to eventually happen. Obviously saw Dennis McCann versus Joe Ham. Dennis McCann, he went ham on Joe Ham, and he got him out of there. I think it was the 8th round. Yeah, it was the 8th round. Lovely combination. Referee stepped in and stopped it. Yeah, Dennis McCann really was impressed with how well he's able to go through the gears. So I think he picked up, might have been, I thought it was the Commonwealth title he boxed for, but it doesn't say here on BoxRec. But he looked very good there in beating Joe Ham, I have to say. Dennis McCann is still very young. I think he's only 21 years old. So he kind of last year, I don't know, he kind of just plateaued a bit. But now he seems to have, got back to what he was doing before, and he's looking very good. I didn't see Hazam Shari, didn't see his fight, but I did see bits of Sam Noakes. He keeps on his knockout streak. Again, I think the Sam Noakes fight was going on around about the same time the Fabio Wadley fight was going on, and I wasn't taking my eyes off that, people. There was no chance I was taking my eyes off that fight. That was a great fight. We'll talk about that now in a bit. And obviously, lastly, we had Zach Parker versus John Ryder. Now, I had that fight on while Dylan Whyte and Franklin was going on, because they were on at the same time. So I was kind of I was mainly focusing on Whyte Franklin. So I was only kind of catching little bits of Zach Parker versus John Ryder. But I watched it today. Now, obviously, I know the result. I knew the result. I knew that Zach Parker basically quit with a suspected broken hand, or certainly had an injury. And I've seen a lot of people, Ty Boot as well, actually. I saw his video. It was a good video. It's a funny video. But a lot of people were giving Zach Parker a lot of you-know-what for quitting. Saying he's got no heart, this, that and the other. At the end of the day, right, I watched Zach Parker in 2018 fight Darryl Williamson, one or the other. He fought him in the back end of 2018 with a clear injury to it. I'm not sure if it was his hand or his arm, but he had a definite injury to either his hand or his arm on one of the sides. So he was basically one-handed in that fight. And he got a gift decision. Let's not beat around the bush here. He got a gift decision. But he was clearly injured, and injured pretty badly. But Zach Parker didn't quit. Even though there was times in there where he was actually taking a bit of a beating, Zach Parker showed heart, he showed grit. He got the decision. I felt he didn't deserve it. I felt that Darryl Williamson definitely deserved to win the fight. But he showed heart. If he didn't have heart, and he was lacking in the heart department, you wouldn't have begrudged him the opportunity to quit there. But he didn't. Now, that was against Darryl Williamson. That might have been for the British title. I'm not 100% sure. I think that might actually have been for the British title when he got that win. Was it? Yeah, it was. It was for the vacant British title. Sorry, it was Daniel Williams. And yeah, he won that fight. One judge, Victor Loughlin, had it wide for Zach Parker in that fight. I remember that fight well, but I don't know how he got that scorecard. But you would think that if he had questionable heart, he would have quit there. Now, he quit in there against John Ryder with a state in the hand injury, and it was a fight that was kind of, I felt that John Ryder was starting to come into it a bit more. You know, Zach Parker had a very good first round. He normally is a fast starter, but saying that, John Ryder is normally a slow starter. But you could see that John Ryder was starting to find his range a bit. He was starting to get into his boxing, and I felt that he would have taken over. But I think Zach Parker would have always been there. But I think that, you know, looking at how the fight was shaping up, it appeared to me as though John Ryder was going to win the fight. Whether he'd stop him or not, well, that's a whole nother debate. But I think John Ryder was on course to win it. Now, end of the fourth round, Zach Parker, hand injured, ended it. At the end of the day, right, you could turn around. It's easy for someone to turn around and say, oh, we should have just carried on, you know, showed the heart of a warrior, this, that and the other. But at the end of the day, I've never been in a situation where my hand's been broken, you know, unable to use it against someone. And John Ryder, he's not a devastating puncher, but he's a big enough puncher. Zach Parker, this was really early in a fight, in a 12-rounder. I don't begrudge him quitting, if that's the case. If you feel as though you are going to be that badly compromised, what is the point in taking a beating for no reason? Hoping for the best. At the end of the day, if you're one-handed, essentially, what more can you do? He decided, you know what, live to fight another day. And at the end of the day, I mean, can you begrudge him that? You know, I see a lot of people saying, oh, he's a quitter, he's this, he's no heart, blah, 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 blah. He's already shown heart in his career, right? He's already shown heart. And I've never been the biggest fan of Zach Parker, nothing against him personally, but I've never really, he's improved, but I've never really looked at him and thought, oh yeah, this guy is going to do great things. He's always been a solid enough fighter. He's improved a lot over the years, to be fair. But I don't begrudge him quitting. You know, early in a fight that's poised against someone who was very much game, who was very dangerous. If it was someone who you were levels above and you could probably beat with one hand, you might turn around and say, well, look, just don't throw the right, or I think it was the right anyway, just don't throw that, and you could probably win with a jab. You know, there's certain things you could probably do with just the jab. But this wasn't like that. You know, John Ryder is a good fighter. And I don't know how badly in pain Zach Parker was, etc. But I don't begrudge him quitting, is the long and the short of it. And I don't understand how these people who have never, a lot of them would have never boxed in their lives, would have never even have broken a bone, would look at Zach Parker and say, oh, you're a coward, oh, look at you, oh, how could you, you know, hang your head in shame. At the end of the day, you know, if you were in that situation, would you carry on for however many rounds it was going to be, 8 more rounds or so, give or take, with a broken hand, suspect a broken hand against someone who hits hard and is hitting you? Would you have carried on? I doubt most people in that situation would have. Now, obviously, some people have that mentality where it's just like, you know, I refuse to, even if it's in their best interest, it's like, I refuse to quit. I will just keep going until you have to lay me out on a stretcher. That's where the corner and the referee need to be on point for. But I don't begrudge, long and the short of it, I don't begrudge Zach Parker quitting at the end of the day. I don't know how badly in pain he was. I don't know the extent of the injury, but it seemed legit, and I don't begrudge Zach Parker at all. I really don't. So hopefully he's okay and he can get back in the ring as soon as possible. For John Ryder, I mean, he's now interim it's a bit of a win-win for him because he's interim WBO champion now, meaning that if Canelo Alvarez does decide to vacate, he'll be elevated to full champion. And John Ryder really should be champion. You know, he's come up short a few times, been very unlucky in his career. The Callum Smith fight, you know, I mentioned it in my post-fight to Dillian Whyte versus Jermaine Franklin, that you know, in that fight, although I could see Callum Smith was losing, we all knew he'd get the nod in the end, which shouldn't be the case, but we all knew it would happen. And John Ryder was unfortunately on the receiving end that night. He should have had his hand raised as WBO champion. I think it was WBA actually. He should have had his hand raised as champion. He didn't. But now he has it. Now he could be elevated to champion after all. If not, he's gonna get a fight against Canelo Alvarez because Eddie Hearn has been saying that he was on the phone to Eddie Reynoso looking to do this fight, possibly in a stadium in London. Canelo has said like he'd like to go to the UK and other countries. So hey, I'd be all for Canelo coming to the UK and seeing a fight. That'd be crazy. But he did say, Canelo Alvarez, that he wants to fight Dimitri Bivol next year, but looking more so September rather than May. Wants to just have a tune-up fight in May. And with the greatest respect to John Ryder, I would put him in the kind of Canelo tune-up categories. So you would imagine that Canelo, it's someone who, he's got some decent wins. He's got a win over Danny Jacobs. Canelo has a win over Danny Jacobs. He's mandatory. So for Canelo, it's a case of, well, I get the mandatory ticked off. He's earned it. You know, he's not just been given it, you know, like a certain Anthony Yard. He's earned it. You know, he's beaten who he's had to beat, who's been put in front of him. And, you know, legit. You know, you could argue as well that not only has he beaten Danny Jacobs, that he should have got a win over Callum Smith, who Canelo also beat. So John Ryder really could have set himself up there big time with this. In terms of the DAZN card, again, I only seen so many fights on this card. Now, I did see Pat McCormick. I seen bits of his fight. I have to say, Pat McCormick, he didn't impress me in that fight at all. I was not impressed with what I seen by Pat McCormick in that fight at all. He really did he almost looked like a sparring partner in there. So, wasn't overly impressed with what I seen from Pat McCormick. That was his debut at Matchroom. In terms of upper the card, again, I only seen the top two fights, which of course we'll talk about Fabio Wadley versus Nathan Gorman. Excellent fight of the night in my opinion, and it just caught fire like that. You know, first round, great round for Nathan Gorman. I really was surprised with how easy Nathan Gorman found to put Fabio Wadley on the end of a jab. He just seemed to be able to do it like that. There was just no playing around. You could see that the better schooling was there instantly from Nathan Gorman. But, you know, he buzzed Wadley slightly in the second round, and that was the end pretty much for him. You know, he almost like he awoke a sleeping beast at that stage, you know, and then it was curtains for Nathan Gorman. I really don't know where he goes from here. As some people were saying, retiring. He's only in his, I think, mid-late 20s. He's not that old. I know he looks older than he is. I think Nathan Gorman, how old is Nathan Gorman? He's only 26, Jesus. So he's not old. So people saying retirement, you know, he is still at that age where, like, you could be turning over pro now at heavyweight and you would not be considered, you know, old or having to get a move on. So he has plenty of time. I think that Nathan Gorman, he really needs, I think with Nathan Gorman it's mental as well. I think he really needs to reassess how he's training, his camp, everything, because he has ability there. There's ability in Nathan Gorman. It's not crazy ability. I'm not saying it's going to win him world titles, but he's better, I think, than people suggest. But I think he's lazy, for one. You know, he's in the 270s. He shouldn't be anywhere near the 270s. He should be getting his weight down. I think his mindset, again, it's a lazy mindset. You know, he was training with Ricky Hatton at one stage in Ricky Hatton's gym. And I remember, I think it was after he was coming back from Daniel Dubois. He was interviewed, I think it was on BT Sport, in the run to one of his fights. Might have been the latte fight. And he said the main reason why he changed gym was because it was a shorter drive from his house. And I was like, what? What? So not that you think it's going to bring your ability out, not that you think you're going to improve as a fighter. Oh yeah, shorter drive from my house, so I'll take it. Right? Like, really, mate? Really? You know, I just didn't get that. So I think with Nathan Gorman, mentally he needs to work on things, get the weight down. 2018, when he fought Sean Turner, he was still carrying a bit in the midriff, but he was a lot lighter than he is now. And for me, that was Nathan Gorman at his sharpest and at his best. And I think if we use that as kind of the foundation, if we could get to that and then we can maybe refine it, could have someone there who could be, again, I'm not saying challenging for world honours, but definitely could be going British level and above, European or so, which there's no shame in that. Definitely not. In terms of the main event, Dillian Whyte versus Jermaine Franklin. Dillian Whyte getting a majority decision. I had a look at the fight again this morning, and I actually don't think Jermaine Franklin won it now after watching it. Now, I still don't have a problem if someone gave it to Jermaine Franklin, but actually after watching it in the light of day, I actually thought this fight was a draw. I actually thought this was a draw, 6 apiece. Because Dillian Whyte, he had more success than I think I was looking at originally when I was watching it. And Franklin, a lot of the shots he was landing weren't scoring punches, but I still felt as though he was able to outwork Dillian Whyte when it mattered in there. You know, when in the rounds that were nip and tuck, I kind of felt Franklin was just outworking him and just kind of catching the eye a bit more with the speed and the way he was able to get his shot selection. A good combination puncher as well is Jermaine Franklin. You know, those fights against Broker and Forrest, Sauer as well, Pavel Sauer as well to an extent, he's definitely better than those make you out to believe. You know, you can see that in him. And I wonder if we got a fully in shape Jermaine Franklin, what we could have in a fighter, because he definitely has ability there. Certainly does. I'm not saying it's world level, but he seems to take a decent shot. Stamina doesn't seem to be that bad, considering the fact he's carrying probably in excess of 30 pounds excess weight. His hand speed's pretty good. His punch selection is very good. He's a decent combination puncher. His feet aren't the slowest. So there's decent fundamentals there from Jermaine Franklin, certainly. So if you could, again, like, you see, this is the thing about the heavyweight division I always say. Yes, as a heavyweight, you don't have to make weight. You don't. You can come in as heavy as you want, but there's an optimum fighting weight for every heavyweight. A good example would be Joseph Parker. Now, Joseph Parker came into his last fight against Joe Joyce in the 250s. Why? He looked heavy, slow-footed, and as I said in my prediction, he's going to get knocked out. And he did. And I always said Joseph Parker, when he's in the 230s, he has foot speed, he has hand speed, he's a better mover, he's better stamina, he's probably more explosive as well. And it's a no-brainer. Just why you were going over that weight is beyond me. Yeah, you can go over it because you're a heavyweight, but ideally that's your optimum weight. So why are you going over it? Because it seems like when you're this weight, you're ticking all the boxes. So yeah, you don't have to make weight, you can weigh as much as you want, but there's an optimum weight for each heavyweight. So I felt that with Joseph Parker, and I wonder if we can get something similar with Franklin. If we could get him into maybe the 230s, how good could he be? Because there's certainly ability there for Jermaine Franklin. Definitely. You know, I seen Eddie Hearn say that the winner of Franklin versus Dillian Whyte would obviously fight Anthony Joshua, but he didn't say it would necessarily be next. Now, I'll touch on that now in a wee bit, but I want to have a quick chat about the Sky card that happened this evening. I will just get some of the fights up now because I don't have the entire card on me. Now, I did watch it. The Alexandra Palace, it did look pretty, well, it didn't look full, put it like that. Don't want to say pretty empty, but it didn't look full. Now, Miguel Lawler, probably saying that name wrong, he fought David Jemison. Now, David Jemison came in on 10 days' notice, but he didn't fight like a guy who came in on 10 days' notice. He was really giving as good as he got, but it appeared at the end of the 8th round, he broke his jaw because as soon as the round ended, he was out to the corner enough and was signalling to his jaw, and you could see the blood. It was like when Arthur Abraham, who did he fight? Arthur Abraham years ago fought. It wasn't the guy, it wasn't Jermaine. thing. It wasn't Jermaine Taylor, it was someone else. I can't remember who it was. But he broke his jaw. It was bad. And he carried on with that. And that's a fighter being very, very brave, carrying on with that. But Jemison, it was pretty bad. It was bleeding. And they caught in the corner, and him just decided, nah, we can't carry on like this. But the main event was obviously Adam Mazine versus Ryland Charlton. Adam Mazine got rid of Ryland Charlton in 2 rounds. Very, very good performance by Adam Mazine. Very fast, very explosive. And it's not just the speed. You know, some people could say that it's the speed. You know, Amir Khan, when he's... Because people would compare him with speed-wise to Amir Khan, and people would say, oh, Amir Khan like that. It's more the speed than power. With Adam Mazine, I think there's power there as well, because Ryland Charlton has shown a pretty good chin in his career. He has. And Adam Mazine has fought other journeymen who've always been durable, and he's able to just go hurt them instantly. So he definitely has punching power there. Ryland Charlton, I'd say it's fair to say he's probably English level, maybe not even British level. He was definitely overmatched in there. But when you see the job Adam Mazine did on it, and Florian Marku, people talk about him being a world level fighter, or I certainly don't see him as that yet, but I know some people talk about him as being that. Well, he had a lot of trouble with Ryland Charlton. I think he went 8 or 9 rounds with him and ended up getting dropped. Adam Mazine had no such issues with Charlton. And Ryland Charlton, it really does show what an away win can do for a fighter, because Charlton really, as he said himself, was going nowhere in his career. Fighting on small hall shows, having to sell tickets. Fought Joe Laws on a Matchroom show 2 years ago. Joe Laws was no great shakes anyway, but beats the living crap out of Joe Laws. Gets a Marku fight off the back of that. Even in defeat, looks good in defeat. And then more opportunities come. I'd say that's probably the last of it for now, for Charlton. Like, he's 9-4 now. But you never know. I mean, like, I think with Charlton, if he wants to make a proper crack at it, he might need to go back down to I know people don't like it, but the ticket selling route, just to try and hone a few skills. Maybe the Joe Laws win. I mean, Joe Laws is like garbage. He's garbage, Joe Laws, anyway. So like, beating him is like, you win the egg and spoon race when you're 10. That's kind of the same level of achievement. So Charlton, look, I like Ryan Charlton. He seems a cool guy, but certainly no. Definitely he was way outmatched there against Adam Mazine. So that was pretty much all the fights. Now, I didn't see Harlem Eubanks fight on Friday. Now, I have to say I didn't see that, but I know he fought on Friday. Now, in terms of some of the other things that's going on, right? So Jamal Charlo has been talking about his ring return. Says he's going to be back in February. Hasn't defended his title in over 500 days. He's still champion, and he won't be fighting until February, so we'll be probably into the 600 days, having not made a title defence, and yet he's not been stripped. Make that make sense now. Charlo, I hope I didn't say Charlton. Jamal Charlo, I used to like him. I used to like him a lot when he was at 154 pounds. And at the early reign at 160, I was thinking, yeah, still pretty damn good. But honestly, like, now he's just kind of... Jamel has really overtaken him. I mean, Jamel is doing things. He really, truly is. Oh, how could I forget, actually, as well? Sorry. I meant to say this, because I actually watched the highlights of this morning. Regis Prograis knocked out Jose Zepeda in the 11th round to become the WBC super lightweight champion. Jose Ramirez is his mandatory, and Teofimo Lopez versus Sandor Martin will be the second mandatory. I'm going to be frank, right? Regis Prograis, I think he is criminally underrated. I think Regis Prograis is absolutely fantastic, and I think he's going to beat Jose Ramirez. And seriously, Teofimo Lopez is in a tough fight against Sandor Martin. I think he'll come through it. But honestly, I might even pick Regis Prograis to beat Teofimo Lopez. I'm telling you now, people, Regis Prograis is talented. It shows the caliber of Josh Taylor. But I'm telling you this, right? If Josh Taylor and Regis Prograis fought 10 times, yeah, maybe Josh Taylor would win more fights. But you'd be talking about maybe 6'4" for Josh. Like, Regis Prograis is that good. He really is that good. And I think he's just underrated because he's not really... he's not, really got a big presence on social media. He's not really with a major promoter. I mean, I think this was on pay-per-view. I mean, I'd love to know how many buys this did. I'd say it did very few. But Regis Prograis is so talented. He is so very, very talented. He's a good puncher. I really think he's fantastic. And I think Ramirez, as good as Ramirez is, I think he's going to lose against Regis Prograis. And honestly, if Teofimo Lopez goes in there with him, I'll have to really have a look at it and make a proper assessment. But right now, I wouldn't rule out. I'd probably pick Regis Prograis over Teofimo Lopez. I would, because people would say, "Oh, but gee, Teofimo beat Lomachenko, blah blah blah." Yeah, so that doesn't mean different style. And I definitely think that Regis Prograis, I remember when he fought in Dongo. I think that was back in 2018. It was 2018, 2019. No, it was definitely 2018. And I was like, just this kid talented. I was like, this kid is talented. I was like, this kid's going to take some beating. And he's only been beaten by Josh Taylor. So definitely great work from Regis Prograis. Really, really looking forward to seeing how he goes and, seeing what he does. In terms of Anthony Joshua's next move, well, Deontay Wilder's manager, Shelley Finkel, has declared that Deontay Wilder now wants to fight Joshua next. We have the WBC eliminated with Ruiz, but we want the Joshua fight. Deontay wants that fight next. Let's make a deal and let's make it happen. Finkel also says on Anthony Joshua, we would take the fight in the UK or the Middle East. We would do it next. We understand Eddie Hearn might want the Dillian Whyte fight next, but the fans would love Joshua versus Wilder. Let's make that fight next. Yeah, I would love that fight too. Now, I would, believe me, if they did that fight, if they put that on pay-per-view, take my money. Take my money, DAZN, take my money. I'd still love to see it now. Would Team Joshua or Team Hearn maybe, would they do it? Would they look at Deontay Wilder and think, you know what, we've had back-to-back losses against Alexander Usyk, and we need to get AJ's confidence built back up. He's going to be training with a new trainer, and we just do not need a massive, devastating puncher like Deontay Wilder. Because I think if they fight AJ and Wilder, and I think if they'd done this even in their prime, I've said this before, that it would really be a case of who lands first. But I think Deontay Wilder would win. Because one, AJ's guard, I think Deontay Wilder would be able to sneak a right hand through that guard personally. I think the right hand is a little bit too quick. But I think that AJ is a fighter who, for me, has a tendency in the ring to overthink things. And I think AJ's not stupid. He knows what Deontay Wilder is and what he brings to the table in terms of punching power. And I think that he would be so wary of not getting hit with that right hand that he'd be kind of looking at Wilder, always too wary of the right hand, that he may end up actually getting caught. Where it's like you hyper focus on something. You focus on it so much that you end up actually overthinking, it might come from here, and you get clipped. I think something like that could happen to AJ if he fought Wilder. And Eddie Hearn's also revealed that he might not fight Dillian Whyte next. He could fight someone else in February and then could fight Dillian Whyte in the summer. Now, personally, after watching that fight last night, I think that AJ would beat Dillian Whyte. I think he'd have a fairly easy enough time with him. And I'd be looking to make that fight ASAP, truth be told, because I don't think Joshua's going to look at what Dillian Whyte did last night and think, oh, okay, he's not going to cause me any trouble. I think for confidence building, it's a perfect fight for him, really, because it looked to me as though Dillian Whyte is just starting to show real signs of being shot-worn at this stage. So I think Joshua will go, and punch resistant as well. I mean, Jesus, I think Joshua will go in there and walk right through him. Now, Otto Wallin has been talked about as well. I know Dimitri Salida has been mentioned Otto Wallin. So has Wallin been saying, he is up there with Dillian Whyte in terms of people who are likely to face Joshua next. For me, I would be definitely not putting him in with Otto Wallin next. Not to say he can't beat him. I've said this before, I think he will beat him. But he's just such a fiddly, awkward fight that it's hard to look good against someone like that. You just want AJ to go in there, get a big knockout, get your confidence back, and then move on to the next one. So I think for me, I would be looking at Dillian Whyte, and I'd really be looking at Otto Wallin probably at the back end of next year as opposed to straight away. I really would. I'd be looking at that towards the back end of last year rather than just straight away now. I really would. In terms of Dillian Whyte, I think that having looked at how he looked last night, if I was Frank Warren, I'd be looking and saying, right, I believe in Daniel Dubois. I want him to be a big star. I want him to be the next to take over from Tyson Fury when he leaves. Let's get the checkbook out. How much is Hearn offering you for Joshua? Right, I'll match it and the rest. Because I think Daniel Dubois goes straight through Dillian Whyte, and I think that could be the win. Not in terms of, credibility, in terms of where Dillian Whyte is at in his career, no. But I think that could be the win where Daniel Dubois, people start taking notice of him. And it's like, oh, he's knocked out Dillian Whyte live on pay-per-view, and he's done it in... Daniel Dubois would just... I think he just steamrolled Dillian Whyte. That could be a demolition job. It really could. And it could be just like, oh, wow, he's after going straight through. This is a guy who's only lost to Fury. He's only lost to Joshua Povetkin, and he avenged that. Now Dubois, this Dubois kid must be good. And for Dillian Whyte, it's a crack at a world title at the end of the day. Whether you count the WBA regular as a world title, I certainly don't. But officially, yes, you are a world champion if you hold said belt. So, for Dillian Whyte, where else is he going to get a chance to win another world title? He's not beating Fury. He certainly ain't going to beat Alexander Usyk. So, for me, it's a real case of, really, where else is there for you to go at that point? Now, interesting, I want to talk about this a bit more, actually, because we had, obviously, a Sky card on today. No Adam Smith. Now, I'm hearing on the rumour mill is that he's been let go from Sky. It's not voluntarily that he left over some... And again, this is rumour. These are allegations. I'm not saying these are fact. This is just what's been told to me, right? The rumour is that Adam Smith has a bit of a... And you wouldn't think it, but a bit of a gambling problem or addiction. Now, I don't know how true that is, but apparently that's the reason why he is no longer with Sky. That's what they're saying anyway. Now, it's not really been brought up at any of the events I've seen, in terms of being, obviously there was a Sky event today. I haven't seen anyone ask any of the people who are working on it about it. But it's certainly a strange one. Adam Smith has been with Sky since the 90s, I think. So, yeah, and Adam Smith doesn't strike... You see, if that is true, Adam Smith just doesn't strike me as someone who'd be like that. Adam Smith seems like the kind of guy who literally, he finishes a Sky show at 10 o'clock and he has his PJs ready on the bed to get into bed, has his little cup of water next to the bed and goes to sleep, has his alarm set for bang on 6:30 in the morning, wakes up, reads the paper and then does the whole thing again, rinse and repeat. That's kind of how I see him. I don't see him as someone who's going to be in the bookies, what round, any round, any round, one first round, here you go, 100 quid, second round, 100 quid, third round. I know people who've done that, not 100 quid, but who've put like a tenner in every round, hoping for a knockout. They're still losing money, but they think they win. Yeah, that's why I don't really gamble. I'd very seldom ever put a bet on anything, unless I kind of was given a tip or something, or I was like, put a bet on this, he's going to win, or something like that. Then I'd be like, nah, not bothered. I'd rather have the money in my pocket rather than gamble it away. But that's the rumour mill anyway on Adam Smith. Now, I was watching Hatman's videos today, right? Actually, over the last few days, and I seen a video he did on this guy right here, Moses Atuma. Now, Moses Atuma is an amateur, and I do like watching amateur boxing. I wouldn't be like Jamie, who follows it just religiously, and he has a great knowledge of amateur boxing, fantastic knowledge of amateur boxing. He follows it a lot more closely than I do. So he's obviously heard of Moses Atuma. I hadn't heard of him until Hatman made a video about him talking about Mike Tyson's record and potentially breaking it. Now, I'm not going to give my 2 cents on whether I think he can or can't, but as soon as I heard of him, I said, well, I got to go have a watch of this guy. And I watched one of his most recent amateur fights, which is on YouTube. You can go and watch it. He's boxing a Bulgarian guy, and Moses Atuma is 17 years old. He's 6'5". He's a southpaw. And, when I heard Hatman being up, I said, okay, look, Hatman's got a good eye for talent. So I want to have a look at this guy and see what he's about. And honestly, I was hugely impressed. He won that fight by first round knockout, stopped the guy to the body. And the energy, the movement, the speed of his punches. Do you remember when Manny Pacquiao fought Oscar De La Hoya and he was just pinning that straight left hand through the guard? There was a few moments in this fight where he was doing that, and I was looking at him like that. He's only 17. This kid is talented. I was looking at that like, this kid is flippin' talented. And he won the super heavyweight gold medal for England at the Youth World Championship only yesterday. Very, very, very talented fighter. Now, Hatman was saying, could he break Mike Tyson's record of winning a world title at 20 years? And I think Mike Tyson was 20 years and 4 months. He definitely has talent. He has ability. If he was to turn over, which I doubt he will, I think he'll do an Olympic cycle. Now, the Olympic cycle is only 3 years as opposed to the normal 4, because obviously Tokyo 2020 happened in 21. So the next Olympics is, well, it'll be in less than 2 years. It's going to be, I forget where it is in 2024, but it's going to be less than 2 years in 2024. I reckon that's the route he's going down. I think he's going to be he'll definitely get to the Olympics. He looks, honestly, the kid looks so talented. Going in there and sparring Lawrence Okoli at 16 years old, looking as polished as he does, the speed, the athleticism, the power. I mean, the kid looks absolutely tremendous. He really does. It's very rare I look at a 17-year-old amateur. There's a lot of talented amateurs out there, but a lot of them are really vastly experienced. And, like Andy Cruz and stuff like that. But this guy is 17, he's still fighting in the youths. And I was just like, wow. I was like, this kid, if he turned over now, 3 years' time, he could very well maybe not be fighting for world titles, but he could be very much up there in the mix because he looks extremely talented. Could he break Mike Tyson's record? I mean, records are there to be broken at the end of the day. I mean, with Tyson, Tyson in his first year, he turned pro, I think, in 85? Yeah, 85, Mike Tyson. And he fought Hector Mercedes in his pro debut, if memory strikes me. And out of all of Mike Tyson's fights, only the Larry Sims fight was never actually recorded or televised. No, it was never recorded, the Larry Sims fight. They say he didn't look good in the Larry Sims fight. Hence the reason why it was recorded, but they said they just chucked the recording out. That's how the rumour goes. Joe Cortez refereed that fight. I'd actually love to, if I ever got to interview Joe Cortez, I'd love to ask him actually what happened in the Larry Sims fight. Because I'd love to know. You can only see little snippets of the images. You can't see the footage. But Mike Tyson, anyway, that's just rambling there. But Mike Tyson, he fought oh, Jesus. He had over 30 fights when he fought Berbick. I think he had about 15, maybe more, maybe 20 fights in his first year. He was fighting twice a month. Unheard of today. But he was able to just fight after fight after fight after fight after fight after fight after fight. So he was constantly staying sharp. He was always in the gym. He was training, even as an amateur, with a pro style. If you look at most amateur gyms, if you go in there and you're really trying to hit the bag, David Hay even spoke about this, that when he was an amateur, the coaches, I think he trained in Fitzroy Lodge. I think David Hay trained in Fitzroy Lodge, where they were actually giving out to him because all David Hay would do as an amateur was just focus on punching power. And that's what, in East Europe, they tend to do that a lot in the amateurs. They really emphasise their fighters to be punchers. They want to get their fighters hitting hard. In the UK and in Ireland, on your toes, pitter-patter punches, pick up points. And that's when you see a lot of them fighters, when they translate into the pros, they struggle because they've just had the amateur system drilled into them, that they're trying to basically learn a brand new style when they turn over. Whereas you see with most Eastern European fighters, and with people like David Hay, Mike Tyson, they had a much smoother transition into the pros for that reason, because they were already basically training with a pro style. Now, Moses Atuma, again, I don't know, will he turn over? I suspect probably not. But looking at his style, I don't think he'd have any trouble translating into the pros if he turned over anytime soon. I really don't. The question is well, basically, with Mike Tyson, he was able to have such a successful career because he turned pro, he Customato training him, he Kevin Rooney, he Bill Clayton managing him, and Bill Clayton was a pretty heavy hitter. He also had, I think, is it Jimmy Jacobs? Jimmy Jacobs died in the 80s, and Mike Tyson never really liked Bill Clayton, truth be told. He was alright with Bill Clayton, but he felt Bill Clayton was more a proper boxing manager. But he had this big team with him turning over, which you need, because at the end of the day, you could have a lot of talent and turn over early. But if you're not signed with a promoter, you're kind of stuck on these small hall scenes. and you're not really going to do much doing that. You know, the sort of way you're not going to get really much exposure. You're having to sell your own tickets, etc. So I'd say he's probably going to wait until he gets a big, lucrative pro deal. Now, he may get some people to come and knocking, you don't know, with Sky or someone. If they did, well, then maybe we'll have a look. But in terms of him beating Tyson's record, I don't know if he'll do that. Even if he turns over, I don't know. But certainly, we have a talent for the future in Atuma. I'm convinced of that. I mean, very, very talented fighter. Incredibly talented young man. Looking forward to seeing him in the amateur game and hopefully in the pro game soon. So I think that's pretty much it for review of the week. I'm going to leave it there, people. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's been fun chatting to you. If we get it up tonight, happy days. If not, first thing in the morning, and we'll have something tomorrow evening. I hope you all have a great week. I hope that the phone rings with some good news for someone this week. I myself, I'm in the middle of something. I'm in kind of a crossroads right now outside YouTube with some stuff going on in my life. Nothing bad. But I'm hoping this week to have a bit of a clearer picture on things. Because I'm in an okay place now. But I'm kind of thinking, should I be... It's almost like, you know, when you're kind of on a roundabout and you're kind of looping a bit. You're like, will I go straight ahead? Which kind of is dead on straight. It's very boring. Like a turn off right here. The road kind of is a bit bumpy. But you don't know where it might go. And it might bring you to somewhere better. But you might have to hit some big, massive grey-haired potholes along the way. That's kind of where I'm at now. Not saying that it's a case of like the choice isn't there quite yet, but we might have to in the next few weeks. You don't know. You just don't know. Anyway, not boring you with that. Hope yous are all good. I hope yous have a great week. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. For now, lads and lassies, I will talk to yous. Peace.